Hello everyone and welcome again to another edition of English with Joseph. Well, today the British media are talking a lot about the sad death of Terry Wogan. Terry Wogan was a very famous broadcaster here in the UK. He was very famous for doing a radio show which lasted, I think, around 20 or 30 years. On the BBC. He had the morning slot on BBC Radio 2. In those days, BBC Radio 2 was a light entertainment programme. They changed it, I think, 10, 15 years ago to make it more appealing for younger people. So now it's a kind of pop station, but at one time, BBC Radio 2 was the leading station amongst older people. I'll talk more about the BBC in a moment. Terry Wogan was a very famous broadcaster on The Breakfast Show, and he also was very famous on British television for doing the Eurovision commentary. For those of you outside Europe, you may be interested in Eurovision. Eurovision is a very strange entity. It's basically a music contest where every country enters its own musician. The winner has the wonderful privilege of hosting the contest the following year. At one time in the history of Europe, Eurovision was a very well respected musical event, but these days Eurovision, at least in the UK, is considered to be something kitsch or something cheap, something bad and something to laugh at, and that's usually because our entries are appalling, and because of the political voting system, Britain usually comes last. The idea is the whole of Europe enters a contest. They select their own entry. The contest is then played live, the performers perform live, and then using telephone voting you vote for the country you think should win. Since the expansion of the EU to include Eastern European states, this has not gone particularly well because no one wants to vote for the UK, and there's also people who won't vote for each other. Such as countries which have a history of being enemies. For example, Britain might not vote for Germany. No one likes to vote for England. These days, Russia might not vote for Turkey. Turkey wouldn't vote for Russia. Cyprus might not vote for Turkey, or at least Northern Cyprus might not. So there's all kinds of little pockets of political defence, which is shown in Eurovision. Anyway, Terry Wogan was, until recently, the host of Eurovision. It's now Graham Norton, but it's very tongue-in-cheek. It's considered to be something funny. It's not something for us, which is taken serious anymore. Other countries take it very seriously indeed. There are some countries, such as Malta, where they have street parties with 99% turnout for Eurovision, but to be honest, it doesn't seem to be very appealing to those countries which are more processed countries or more educated. Okay, turning back to the BBC, the BBC provides us with a number of nationally networked programs. We have BBC 1, 2, and I think these days we have a BBC 3 and a BBC 4. We also have lots of BBC radio stations. We have 5 national, and then we also have very specific ones like the BBC Asian Network. We also have local stations, BBC Radio Scotland, BBC Radio Wales, and on top of that in England the BBC has a number of local outlets such as BBC Radio London, BBC Radio Oxford. The strange thing about the BBC is the way in which it handles things like news. It's not streamlined, and I'm surprised about that because they're always complaining they have no money, but they seem to fund these stations which don't really do very much. I do know that Many of these have been reviewed, and now I think BBC Radio Bucks, Barks and Hearts, I think, or Bucks, Beds and Hearts, that's Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, now share programming in the evenings, so there are changes coming in. The BBC is funded by a licence fee, which all British people have to pay, whether they watch it or not. If you have a TV, you have to pay for it. That's under review, that will be changing. Probably advertising will be coming to the BBC. As well as that, we have independent television channels to suit everyone's needs. We even have internet-only broadcasting channels now. The media in the UK is very complex. If you want to watch any of it, you can do by logging on to www.filmon.com. If you use the application of filmon.com, you have instant access to all channels in the UK, including the specialised ones. We air our channels using a system called Freeview, which is a digital system. Filmon exists because it broadcasts these channels live and free, but it broadcasts them 8 or 10 seconds behind ordinary time, which means that you are able to watch them 10 seconds later, because technically that's not live. Filmon is not based in the UK, so I think the British government don't have access to them anyway. They can't stop them doing this service. I'd be very interested to hear about your favourite radio channel or TV channel. If you could write to me, send me the link, I will happily review it and let you know my thoughts. It doesn't have to be in English. These days I've been watching lots of Russian TV, Korean TV, as well as other channels around the world, so I would be very interested if you could take a moment to let me know what your favourite channel is. Remember last time I was telling you that I've written a book of poetry about Hampton Court Palace. You can buy that on Kindle, or if you come to me directly, I'll be happy to share that with you and to send it to you. Likewise, if you see my Kindle books on my author page, Joseph McTaggart, if there's any that you like, please send me a request and I'll be happy to send those to you. So that's the entertainment news for today. Everyone's talking about the sad death of Terry Wogan, the Irish broadcaster who was very famous in the UK for hosting Eurovision and the British radio programme on BBC Radio 2. In other news today, I spent the weekend updating my LinkedIn profile, and then I watched it aggressively attacking everyone in my address book to ask them to sign up. That was very strange. I've never used LinkedIn before, and it's now hooked up with every part of my social network. It's nice. Please find me on linkedin.com, Joseph McTaggart, profession English teacher, and you can add me on there as well. I've also opened up a YouTube channel. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with YouTube, if I'm honest, but I wanted to set up a YouTube channel in order to direct traffic to the site on Dailymotion. To have a presence on YouTube, I think, is good. It already had somewhere around 1,000 hits, although the counter is stuck at 197. I think what YouTube does is, if you put a new web clip up and it gets so much traffic, immediately it will slow it down to ensure it's not a scam. But anyway, there's been 1,000 hits, and it's showing it around 200 on the counter, but that should change soon. And what else have I been watching? Well, in other media outlets, I've been watching some Russian TV, some Chinese TV, and I've also been watching Ahmadiyya TV, which is an Islamic TV channel from the UK. The difference with this TV channel is it's all about peace and love. It's a Sufi channel. The Ahmadiyya movement was founded by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who was a very famous Sufi in the 19th century who came from Pakistan. Well, it was India then. They called him King of the Sufis because he knew a lot about Sufism. He wrote some wonderful books, many of which I have recorded, so you can listen to those if you want. I can send you links. One of the most famous one is Tazkira, about the revelations he claimed he had from God. Another one is called Our Teaching, which is about the Ahmadiyya movement. Beautiful. If you speak Urdu or Punjabi, you might find his original works even more interesting. The Ahmadiyya movement has its headquarters in London, and there's another Ahmadiyya movement based in Lahore in Pakistan, which is not the same. I think the division is split into two separate parts, one with a caliphate and one without a caliphate. But it's very, very interesting if you like history. The Ahmadiyya movement is the last divide of Islam, I think. It travelled through the centuries. The caliphate was disbanded and dismantled in 1924 in Turkey, but the Ahmadiyya Caliphate, I think it was formed around the same time as the other caliphate was dismantled. Most Muslims do not recognize the Ahmadiyya movement as indeed being Muslim because of the claim of a final prophet, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, rather than Muhammad. But Mirza Ghulam Ahmad makes a difference between a final prophet and a lesser prophet. He does not claim to be a major prophet, he claims to be a lesser prophet, in accordance with Jewish tradition and Christian tradition. So if you like the history of religion, I strongly recommend you go to the Ahmadiyya TV channel, where you can learn more. And there's live streams in German, Urdu and English. So if you're looking for some light entertainment and something a little bit different from the UK, from one of our subcultures, you can indeed look at the Ahmadiyya channel. It's very much part of our establishment as well. Many of our government members would be associated with the Ahmadiyya movement. It's very peaceful in nature and harmless, although they seem to have built quite a hierarchy around themselves, which is not particularly in keeping with spiritual practices, but academically very interesting indeed. We have a TV channel to suit most tastes in the UK, ranging from Shia Islam to Russia Today. I don't know why our government allow a lot of criticism on media about the government itself. You would think that if a TV channel such as Russia Today is heavily broadcasting propaganda against the government, you would think our government would take away its right to broadcast on British TV, but in the name of freedom, of course, it will not do that. And Russia Today has as much of a right as does Iranian TV, the channel Press TV, to broadcast as anyone else. It's very interesting, the media in the UK. Okay, I think that's all I have to say for today. So if you have any comments, feedback is always welcome. I'm always very open to hearing what you have to say. A few of you have asked for the book about Hampton Court, and I have sent it on. If you haven't received that, do write to me again. A few of you are also asking about my favourite authors and influences. Maybe that's something I can pick up another time. In the meantime, please do check me out on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and all of the other social media sites. I think the only one I'm not on is Google+. I never quite worked out how to use that. And of course, I'm always available on italki and other platforms to help you with your English as well. So it's very nice talking with you today, and I wish you a very good day until we meet again. Thank you and goodbye.